I'm logging in via a web portal we're using, like I said, for commissioning. This isn't exactly how you would log into it. You would just type in the IP address of the device. I assume you'd use some sort of VPN or something like that if you need to get to it from somewhere off of the network, but that would be the way that you could do it. So, like I said, I'm getting in by cell. So the cell connection from the gateway device over there is connecting back to a Verizon account, and then that's connecting back to our internet server for me to get into it. But yeah, we can go through the different options as far as how you'd want to get to it. Can I make this bigger? Can you guys see the screen? So the system's broken up into different zones is what we call. So a group of lights we call a zone. And by default, there's a single zone in here that has every single light in it, and then we can create any other number of zones. So if you needed to break up the parking lot into different groups, maybe you wanted a handful of lights in this particular parking lot to behave differently than that particular lot over there. Charles, our project manager, has been working on this previously, and then Greg, another guy from my team, and based on their communication with, not sure who exactly here, they made it sound like all the lights here are just going to do the same thing. Right now, everything's all in a single zone. So that's where this parking lot zone is here. So if I click on this particular zone, I can open it up and I can see all the lights that are inside of it. So down here, there's an individual lighting control for every single light that's out there. So every one of those little twist lock controllers sitting on top of a light is represented here. And if I wanted, I can dim each individual one. I can turn one off. So that particular light is going off as soon as I do that. If we knew visually where they were, you could probably see it out there. So the names of the lights were what we were given from this map. Actually, we've got 3 different map files in there. So these files are what gave us the pole numbers and the names. So we can rename those to something different if you guys want, but that's where the naming scheme came from. Right, so these are we were given 3 different blueprints and with all these pole numbers. I found a couple lights actually that weren't on this map, so I've kind of numbered them myself after that. I think there were 118 lights that were on the prints, but then I found another 8 lights, something like that weren't on there. From the top of the poles, the controllers themselves that are communicating have an address. That's actually where we got the information here, but they have a little sticker on them that has this address. So you'd have to have a lift to get out there. But if you got on the lift and got to the top, you could figure out which address matches up to that pole and figure it out that way. You could also just log in the system and turn off lights. That's how I did it yesterday, trying to figure out where I was in the lot. So this is what the little controllers look like. On the side of them, there's just a little sticker, and that sticker has this address on there, one of these 6 character addresses on it. So it's got that, it's got a little barcode on there, the unique identifier that our system uses to determine which light is which. So if you swap out a controller, for example, or add a new light, then you'd have to go in and add that. I did that with a couple different lights yesterday. I'm gonna walk through that process to show you what you'd have to do there. In fact, there's a couple that need to have that done right now while we're on the map. So you can see there's a couple lights that have the red circle around them. That's just indicating that we can't communicate with those. The 3 that we have in our system right now with those red circles on them don't have controllers on them at all. I think what happened is that those 3 controllers stopped working and then replacements were sent out, and I don't think they've just been installed. The ones right out front, and then there's a couple here on the side, do have controls, but the majority of this building does not. This is our zone for all of the lights. So every single one of the lights, there's 125 of them right now, are added to this individual zone. If we were to need to add more lights, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can just manually go in here and add a light, name it whatever you want, and then use that unique identifier I just mentioned. You'd have to track that information whenever you install a new one. You can input that information and just add the light to the system. That's the slow way to do it. The quickest way to do it is you just go to this feature we've got called Census, and it just scans and looks for new devices that are communicating and just lets you automatically add them to the system. That's what I did yesterday, and that's how I discovered that there were 8 extra lights that were out there that needed to be added. The Census found 8 new ones, and then after they were added, I went around and blinked the lights until I could figure out where exactly they were located and got them mapped. Like I said, I know there's 3 right now that need to be added, but I think everything else looks like it's pretty well set up. So every single one of those controllers actually has its own individual photocell, but rather than relying on each photocell individually to turn off all the lights, we're just using one of the photocells on one of the lights. I think it's light like 57. Yeah, light 57's photocell. And whenever it's detecting that there's light, which it just did, darkness, then the system is making the decision to turn off all of the lights whenever it sees light, and then turn them all on whenever that particular photocell sees darkness. So, and that's adjustable. So I guess adjustable in which way? Yeah, so we can adjust the thresholds to make that happen at a later time. And we can actually adjust a schedule to do something different if you don't want it to necessarily use a photocell right now. So what a lot of people do, and we can, like I said, we can change any of this, is you may have the lights stick on until, I don't know, a half an hour after sunrise or something like that. We can put scheduled events in there based on the sunrise and sunset times. And then maybe during the middle of the day, you might have the photocell mode kick in. So in case it does happen to get overcast throughout the day, then the lights get kicked back on. So knowing that, let's go ahead and turn them back on. So from zone all, which is the zone that has all of the lights in there, we can just make a change to every single one of the lights at once. So I'm going to turn them all on to 33%. Shows you visually from the top of the zone, but then every single one of the lights as well adjusted, so we can see that they were all just turned on. You can actually go into each one of these lights, and you can look at the power graph to see how much power that they're using at any given time. But whenever they were on 100%, they were closer to, looks like 83 or so. That's just that light. That's that light in particular, yeah. So it's not necessarily all combined into a single section. You could pull that data out if you wanted to try to get some analytics on it, something like that. Way that the lights just went off, that's based on a schedule. I'll get to that in a second. I'll show you what that does. The scenes are what we've set up to actually make changes to all the lights. So right now there's only 2. And a scene just means it's a change that we want to make to a zone as far as changing the behavior of the zone. Whether we want them all to kick on, whether we want them all to kick off, or to dim, or to follow the behavior of a photocell. And that's actually what these are doing. So there's 2 different scenes in here. One of them says that whenever the photocell detects darkness, turn all the lights on to 100%. And the other one says the exact same thing, except whenever it sees darkness, turn the lights on to 70%. And those 2 scenes are being used in our schedule here. So this is the schedule that's currently set up. Like we just discussed, it may be worthwhile to go ahead and adjust this. But every day at midnight, all the lights are switching to 70% dimming. But then throughout the day, anytime between 6 a.m. and midnight, all the lights are going to be on at 100% whenever they detect darkness. So until we got here, all the lights were at 100%. If at any point during the day that they saw darkness again, they would have switched back to 100% unless it was between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. And we can go through every single day. This is kind of like an Outlook calendar. It's got a 365-day calendar. You can go actually 5 days in advance. So if you wanted to change the events that are happening on any particular day, you know something is happening where you need something different to happen, you can go into that particular day and edit one of those events to do something different. So that's what we got set right now. If we want to, like we just mentioned, add a new behavior or something different, actually first what we'll do is we'll add a new scene. We'll add a scene that says we want to turn all the lights 100%. So you're given a list of different things that you could do to that light or to the zone that you're going to affect. In this case, we're just going to say we want all the lights to go on to 100%. So the on behavior is the same as 100%, but you could set a custom dimming level if you wanted to do, say, 80%. Type it in, or you could just adjust this little bar to wherever you want it to go. But we're going to do 100, which is the same as on. You can go all the way down to 1%. I think those lights will work at 1%. And here we can test it real quick and see. So let's set all of them. So they probably don't dim a whole lot between 1% and around 10 to 15%. Most LED drivers don't. But they will still stay on until you go to 0. So we will set up a scene saying all lights 100% on, and then we're going to choose the zone that has all the lights in it. So there are 2 default zones, or there are 2 zones in the system right now, and right now they are pretty much exactly the same. One of them is a zone that you can't get rid of. It's called zone all, and it by default includes every single light in your system. We created another one that also includes all of the lights. Just for a best practice, you don't generally want to make changes to your zone all. In case you were to add any other lights that weren't in this lot that you didn't want to affect, it's worthwhile to go ahead and have a non-standard or non-default zone that has all of your lights you want to affect in it. So that's where this parking lot zone comes in. So what we said is the parking lot zone, we want this scene to set everything to 100%. And just creating that scene didn't actually do anything. You can actually go in right here. We could log into the system and go to the scenes page that we're on, and we could just apply that scene, which kicks it on. But what we're actually going to use it for is to go and schedule it. This has an option. There you go. So from the scene, you can actually go to schedule. And we want to schedule that all lights 100% scene to kick on early in the morning. So you could set it to a specific time. It's set for Eastern time right now. It's got a clock that's updated via the internet. In this case, let's set it via the solar time. So we're gonna say maybe after sunrise. We'll say 20 minutes after sunrise. So all I did in that case is I created a single event that happens this morning, so it's actually in the past. Oh no, actually, it says sunrise is gonna be at 20 minutes before 8:30, so 8:16. So all the lights at 8:36 are gonna kick on to 100%. So we can set that if we want to happen every single day. So just set a recurrence, and then we can say which days that we want that to happen. So we'll say every day of the week. So tomorrow morning, it'll be 8:37 whenever it kicks in, but on the 19th, it's gonna be 7:55 a.m. when it kicks in as the days get shorter. It does adjust for daylight savings automatically, so you don't have to worry about changing anything there. All of this being said, so I'm adjusting the actual lighting control system. My understanding is that you guys may end up just using a building management system to interact with the system to make scheduled changes. You may not even use the schedule. I'm not sure if there's someone in this room that has a better idea of what the long-term plan is. So in addition to the lighting control gateway, in fact, let me show you what picture of that thing looks like. This is the device that is upstairs. This is the device that's upstairs on the penthouse level. So that's what's communicating with all the lights. It's just installed on a wall, on an exterior wall upstairs. And it's got the 2 cell antennas, like I said, is how I'm accessing it. It's also got a Wi-Fi antenna. So if you did want to manage it just by getting physically close to it, probably within a couple hundred feet, something like that, you could log into it with Wi-Fi. And then there is an antenna coming out. Instead of this little small antenna, there's actually an exterior antenna that's wired to this device and then actually protruding all the way up to the roof of the building. So there's a big long-range antenna just to make sure that it can reach the lights around the system. All of the controllers out there have an extra sensor slot where an occupancy sensor could be wired to them, but I don't think there are sensors attached to any of these physically right now. They could be installed on them, but those lights right now don't have occupancy sensors. Most of the zone sections, like I said, if we want to change that to something different, then we can. If we want to see the current behavior of that photocell, whether or not it is detecting light, right now it's saying that it is seeing light. And as we saw about probably 10 minutes ago, actually, it switched from darkness to light. So that lets you kind of have an idea of where the threshold is for that photocell. If we did want to change that so it wouldn't detect light until later, you could go in and we could change those thresholds to something different down here. Depending on how you're going to use it, we'll figure out if that makes sense. But we can go ahead and tweak these to do something different if you want it to detect light a little bit later in the day so it doesn't kick the lights off quite so soon. We could set up a duplicate zone so that could be minimal work for you that already has another photocell in it. I'm not sure how that particular light was chosen as the one that will act as the photocell. I'm not even sure exactly where light 57 is. Let's see if we can figure that out. It's over here, it looks like in the loading dock. So the loading dock over there has a pole that has a light on it, and the photocell on that particular controller is the one that's being used to detect darkness. But yeah, we could set up any other photocell to be used as a backup. It wouldn't directly use that backup, say for whatever reason that particular pole gets powered down and we can't detect anything from that sensor, then the lights would kind of they would default to not having communication to that light and just default to on at that point. If for whatever reason you did have a light that was stuck on throughout the day, you might log in the system and check the alarms and see if we've lost communication to that controller. It could be a communication issue, or it could just be that it was not programmed properly. That'd be your most common issues. From the configuration side, that's the general lighting config already. But if there are plenty of other system options you can go through, I'm not going to go through all of these, but here's some different things we could look at. So we can keep a copy of the backup. I suggest getting a copy for yourself, just in case for whatever reason you do need to swap out that device up there in the penthouse. We keep a backup whenever we commission it. But if you did want to save off a local database, you could just log in and do that. From our system side, you can see which software we're running. We do release from Synapse new software probably every month or two. I don't necessarily suggest that you need to constantly upgrade it though, unless you're changing capabilities or want to do something different or running into some sort of a problem. You should be fine to just stick with the software that you've got. Almost our most recent software, it hasn't been loaded to the absolute latest. I've seen no reason that you need to adjust the software at this point. So. So the particular controller that is installed on those lights are some that we did have an infant failure issue with at one point. These controllers were all sold a long time ago, but now that they've been running for several weeks, if not months, that gives us a good indication that they should continue to keep running. The lights themselves, now that's a good thing to distinguish between. If it's the light itself that fails or a component of the light, like a driver or a transformer or whatever, then that would go through Cree. But the little controller that twists on the top belongs to Synapse, as well as the lighting control gateway up there. Now, I don't know, if you purchased them from Cree, maybe you go back to them and they could do an RMA with us and we just get all that worked out, still ship it to you guys. I'm sure we could figure out a way to do it. It's not complicated, but yes, you're right. Technically, all of the fixtures are Cree fixtures. Now, if you know that we've lost communication with the controller based on the alarm in the system, then you might visually look at what the fixture is doing, and that can kind of help you figure out if you think it's an actual light issue. So for example, if the light is stuck off, that's also going to power down our controller, but it could be that the light just has a bad LED driver or power to that fixture has come loose or failed for some particular reason. So in that case, you wouldn't know for sure if our controller has failed because the light is just not powered. So that's why we've lost communication at that point. Now, if the light was on in the other scenario, but we have lost communication with the controller, more than likely that's just a controller issue, because you know for sure the power is getting to the light because you see it visually lit. And at that point, the only issue is just trying to turn the light on and off. That's probably just a controller. You can look visually at, like I said, the power data in the light, and that sometimes will help you get an indication of what's going on. So in some cases, depends on how they've got it wired to the drivers. I don't know if these fixtures have more than one or not, but you can go in and look at the power data on one of these. So for example, if you had one light that get into the system and you could check and you could see if our controller was communicating, and you could check to see if we're actually seeing any power data from her or not. Use that before in order to determine that just an LED driver, one of multiple drivers within that fixture had failed for some reason. You could kind of get an idea that we weren't seeing any power coming from the driver, even though our controller was still operating. In other words, there is a way, as long as we still have communication to our controller, as long as power is making it to it, we can get some information about the LED drivers and whether or not that they're pulling power from the system or not. You don't have any buttons physically attached to it. There are options where you could attach like a 5-button switch where you could go up and press buttons next to it if you wanted to control something. There is a log in the system, which is probably worthwhile just to show you real quick. So if you wanted to see what had happened recently or who had made changes to a system, then you can log into the audit log and go check. So in this case, we could see where we had an event kick in, where all of the lights kicked on to 100%, and it tells you what time it happened. You can see where lights got adjusted to different levels depending on what the schedule is telling them they were supposed to do. So we can go back and we can see all of the events that have kicked in over the last several weeks. So you can go back and kind of get an idea, well, what happened that day? Why were the lights not on until whatever time? You can go back here and I'll show you exactly what time that, if you were using different user accounts, you could filter just on that particular user. If you wanted to see what Chad had done, for example, as long as he was using his own account when he logged in, you could just filter on that and it would show you every interaction that Chad had done with the system. Anything that shows system just means that it was kind of a scheduled event, something that happened automatically that somebody didn't have to manually log in and do. So like I said, right now in the system, while we're talking about that, there's only the one default account. It's a Snap account. And the password is actually on a sticker that's physically on the front of the gateway. So we could change that to something else. Right now, let's see, I can tell you what that password is. Password with multiple words and numbers and characters. I've got a picture of it if you need to see what it is. But we can create other accounts for different users. We'll probably want to create one specifically for the BMS gateway so that whenever we see interaction between it and the building management system, it's not just using the default account. You would know that it's something that came from the BMS as opposed to just the default Snap account. So on that sticker, while we're talking about that, there's a couple different passwords that are written on that device. Like I mentioned, that one of the antennas on the gateway is a Wi-Fi antenna, also used just for local management. So there's cell connectivity, which is what we're using right now. There will be Ethernet. But then you can also log in the system with Wi-Fi if you're within range of the Wi-Fi access point that's built into the device. If you get close to it, this is the network that you would see advertised. It'd say Simply Snap and then the Ethernet MAC address of that gateway. And then that default password is also printed on the sticker. So if you did want to log into it that way, for whatever reason your Ethernet's down or you don't have the Ethernet installed yet and you do want to go up and log into it, just get physically close to it within that room or probably at least the floor. You should see that network advertised, and then you can connect to the Simply Snap network, and then I can give you that default password as well. But it is also printed on that sticker. So the sticker has a default Wi-Fi password, which you'd use to connect to the network. And then once you've connected to that, you would need to know the default IP address that our web server responds on. Once you get the Ethernet set up, we can do a little bit more and show you how to connect everything that way. Because the BMS gateway, we can also get remote access to help you get that set up. So since it's not wired right now, there's not a way for us to get that communicating. We'll need to figure out what you want to do with the building management system. Like if you're wanting to actually change the status of the lights, or if you want to use the integrated schedule in the lighting control system, or if you're going to do that all from the building management system, or if you just want to pull the photocell data. Yeah, there's a lot that we'll have to talk about once that gets set up. So we can try to do that today if it's wired, or we can definitely do it remotely if for whatever reason it gets delayed. So this BMS gateway device, I don't know if you guys have any other equipment from this company, but there's a company called Sierra Monitor. I think they recently got by MSA Safety, but they're the ones that actually manufacture this particular gateway. And then they've worked with us to create custom software that allows it to interact between BACnet system or a Modbus system, but generally BACnet, and then our system via a REST API. It's a piece of hardware created by Sierra Monitor, but we've worked with them to put custom software on it so that it integrates with our system. Even if you decide today and they get wired what you want to do with it, we can still help you make changes. And as part of our commissioning process, we're giving you a 30-day commissioning warranty. So any changes in the first 30 days, we can do absolutely whatever you want for free. That'll give you enough time to kind of get an idea of what you're wanting the system to do. And then we can also show you how to make changes yourself for sure. There's a team of guys, including me, that handle our post-sales support. So I do a lot of different things. I do commissioning, but I also do post-sales support and a little bit of pre-sales and training as well. Did, for whatever reason, need assistance or just have some questions, then you can open a tech support case with our team, and then we can work with you on that. So you'd want to go in and create an account on our portal to do that, but then it'll show you a history of any other case you've ever opened and that kind of thing. It uses Dynamics 365, so you guys are probably somewhat. And I'll give you some information in an email just to point you to that, just in case. So the map is a little bit confusing in that it's 3 separate blueprints. If you're visually looking at the lights, you can see the controller kind of sticking out the top of it. And that's how you can tell, like that one right there, I forget which one that is in the system, but it doesn't have a controller on at the moment. You can kind of visually tell that there's nothing sitting on top of it. It's also not on, so it may be it just doesn't have power yet or it's not set up yet. If you guys have a better map, this is the only maps that we were able to get. So like I said, it's 3 separate blueprints that are all kind of just next to each other. It's not a great visual representation of where everything is. You may not ever log in the system to look at the map. If you are able to come up with a better visual image, Google Maps unfortunately right now just shows a big dirt pile, so there's not a whole lot here, then we could put that map into the system and you could actually get maybe a better representation of where everything physically is. It took me a little while to figure out where all these were, because looking at these buildings isn't super obvious, at least not to me, because I've only looked at it for a couple days. Think like on the plan, for example, these 2 little dots are 2 lights on a single pole, but then these are the 2 lights that are attached to that pole. But that could be easily changed. You could go in here and replace that with a different image. You just have to visually, or you'd have to go in and remap everything, which is not incredibly complicated. We've got mapping tools in the system that allow you to do that. It wouldn't take too long. The lights will just be statically on at 100%, and they're not going to ever turn off until 8:36 when they'll check the photocell to turn off. So now you don't have to worry about in the morning them potentially being off, even if it's a little bit dark. We're not going to check for that photocell until 20 minutes after sunrise. They're going to stay that way, so they're going to turn on to 100% based on the way it's set up right now. They're going to turn on to 100% if the photocell detects darkness. So whatever time in the evening that happens, and I guess we could look at that. So it looks like it's been around 6:40 each day where it's detected darkness. So it's kind of bounced back and forth a little bit, and it's like around 6:40, 6:41, 6:42 where it's detected darkness. So that looks like each evening whenever the lights have been kicked on is at that point. And at that point they're going to, based on the schedule, kick on to 100%, and then at midnight they all dim to 70% until the morning whenever they'll go back to 100. So now the lights are straight up statically on 100% between 6 a.m. and 20 minutes after sunrise. I think 4 lights out there that need controllers attached to them. 3 of them are the ones that are on this map. And I noticed one other pole. I think it's up close, actually probably that one right there. That one isn't even in the system. There's one of them that's not even been added, and maybe it's just because it's a new pole or something like that. But I think there are 4 that need controllers, and I'll follow up with Tom about that. Assume it was his team that's the one putting them on there. Does anyone know?